One of the key questions from the January 6th insurrection: who did this and why? Understanding that also means getting to know a number of paramilitary groups. One of them was recently the focus of a study coming out of West Point. The Oath Keepers have been around since 2009. It describes itself online as a, quote, nonpartisan association of current and formerly serving military, police, and first responders, unquote. And the group claims to have 30,000 members. The Oath Keepers were seen at the insurrection walking in line through the mob. Investigators accuse the group of playing a key role in conspiring to incite violence. A new article from West Point's Combating Terrorism Center dives into how the Oath Keepers originated and how they're evolving. This line from the report stood out to us. Quote, "The group has used a warped sense of patriotism, loose enforcement of laws surrounding paramilitary activity, and America's founding revolutionary spirit to justify anti-government mobilization," unquote. Joining us now are the authors of this report. John Lewis is a research fellow with the George Washington University's program on extremism. And Matt Kreiner is with the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. He's a senior research scholar at the Center on Terrorism, Extremism, and Counterterrorism. Good to have both of you with us tonight, gentlemen. And Mr. Lewis, I wonder if I could start with you and that line from your report about a warped sense of patriotism. How does that sense of patriotism factor into the Oath Keepers from their beginning, from what they were when they were founded?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the invitation to be here, obviously, on this very important topic. I think the one thing that really stands out about the Oath Keepers is their ability to wrap themselves in that kind of warped version of the American flag, right? You see them recruiting law enforcement, former members of the military, and appealing to that idea of a continuation of the oath. And when you look at their activities in the past 10, 11, 12 years, what you see is this real permissiveness, especially at the state and local level, as it relates to the armed militia activity that has made the group famous in this time period and eventually led them to the U.S. Capitol on January 6th.
Matt Kreiner, you write about a shift in the Oath Keepers about 5 years ago in late 2016. Here's what you write in your report. Quote, "In late 2016, there was a noticeable shift in the Oath Keepers' worldview reflected in both its online and offline activity. With the defeat of Hillary Clinton in the general election, Rhodes, that's Stuart Rhodes, who founded the group, and the Oath Keepers found a new enemy in the burgeoning anti-Trump movement, manifesting in social justice protests across the country," unquote. Talk about that, if you would, Matt Kreiner, why it is that anti-Trump sentiment turned into such a catalyst for the Oath Keepers movement.
Absolutely. The Oath Keepers, as John pointed out just now, they've wrapped themselves in a belief that they are the ultimate patriotic actors. And the presence of an ultranationalist in running for office in Trump, and then a very strong opposition to that from anti-Trump activists that had hit the ground in 2016, really galvanized the Oath Keepers to start looking towards conspiratorial beliefs much more heavily. And one of the things we see is that their loss of faith in democracy reflects the rise of far-right sentiments throughout the 2016 and onward era. This is why they focus so heavily on Antifa and leftist factors, specifically after 2016.
John Lewis, the January 6th Select Committee has subpoenaed the founder of the Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes, as part of its investigation. What do we know so far, if anything, about their role in what happened on January 6th?
Absolutely. So as the Department of Justice alleges, the Oath Keepers played a central role in this kind of broad overarching conspiracy to breach the U.S. Capitol and prevent the certification of the election. Research by the Program on Extremism, which currently tracks all 711 cases as of today, highlights at least 24 Oath Keepers who are part of this overarching conspiracy. And while Stuart Rhodes is not named directly in these indictments, he is identified as person one. And throughout these indictments, you can really see, as the government alleges, this kind of leadership role that he takes on the ground on that day, having phone calls with members who are later seen in these videos here, moving up in a stack formation up into the U.S. Capitol.
Matt Kreiner, what is victory, for lack of a better word, success, look like for the Oath Keepers? What is their end game as they see it?
I think that's a really hard question to answer about the Oath Keepers, predominantly because so much of the organization is wrapped up in what Stuart Rhodes sees about his own control over power of the group and the prestige that brings him. If you look at the rank and file and the broader rhetoric that's expressed by the group, what we often see is this, again, perverted notion of patriotism. And I think if you really dive into the deeper elements of what that sort of portends in their understanding of democracy, it's this diminishment of what democracy can do for the vast majority of Americans. It is not an equality for all notion. It is much more limited, is singularly focused within a more conspiratorial understanding of right-wing politics that is more single-party state-oriented rather than necessarily everybody has a voice at the table.
So then, John Lewis, does that mean that they just kind of want to watch, hate to borrow a line from the movie The Dark Knight, but then you remember what Alfred said, some men just want to watch the world burn. Is that part of what the Oath Keepers want, is just to watch some parts of America burn, regardless of what really may come out of those ashes, as long as it burns?
I think certainly in some cases, yes. And I think what's important to remember, not just about the Oath Keepers, but about this broader patriot movement, is it really is a big tent movement, and one that brings in all forms of anti-government extremists, white supremacists, Christian identity adherents. And so you obviously get a wide range of views, but I think what Matt highlighted earlier is very important. This embrace of anti-democratic views, embrace of authoritarianism, embrace of fascism, that is what led them to the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. And this embrace of what they viewed as a chance to grab hold of those levers of power.
And finally, Matt Kreiner, before we have to let you two go, what can we expect from these groups in the future? Do they believe that they will win, that this, movement that they're on is going to succeed, or do they see themselves more as kind of going down fighting and taking as many people with them as they can, before we go?
Yeah, the Oath Keepers see themselves as the guardians of the Republic. They took the actions they did on January 6th because they truly believe that what they're doing is saving what they perceive to be American democracy. And I think moving forward, what we can really pull out of that lesson is that there are going to be people who act with what they believe to be the greatest intent for America, but in reality might be the exact opposite of what we believe to be, as a country, the best thing forward as a democracy.
Matthew Kreiner and Jonathan Lewis, we appreciate you making time for us. Appreciate the report. It's a fascinating look, and we thank you for talking through it with us. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.